I'm sure a lot of you are already paying attention to the news in the gaming industry, mostly mobile games and gacha games. Player bases declining, revenues shrinking, and a lot of games hitting end of service and developers just closing the servers permanently. So today we're going to delve into the topic, is gacha gaming dead? And we're going to do that with a 29 million slide PowerPoint presentation. Okay, it's not 29 million. Sometimes they feel like 29 million slides when I'm making them, but let's start it. Let's go. So are gacha games dead, or does it just look that way? Over the past decade, the number of gacha style titles flooding the market has exploded, with new games launching almost every month, each promising fresh mechanics, better graphics, and more generous rewards, or at least that's what they tell us. Yet despite this surge in supply, many of these games now fade fast, spiking in downloads and revenue during launch, only to see interest fall sharply once the initial hype and marketing push are over. We are going to look at how entries into the gacha market have continued to rise, while long-term player engagement after release continue to fall. So we're going to see a couple charts from Google Trends. Actually, I'm going to move my head a little bit so you guys can kind of see how things are. These are worldwide charts over the past, and this is Google. This is not, I didn't make these up. These are freely available to look at through Google. This is over the past 10 years worldwide. So we're going to go over a handful of popular games, and then we're going to go from there. So Puzzles and Dragons, very, very old OG mobile game over the past 10 years. And this is going to happen with any game. This is not specific to mobile games, gacha games, RPGs, anything. Any game will lose steam over time. That's how they happen, and they pick up anytime there's an event, there's a collab, there's a crossover, there's a reason to get old players back into the game or get new players into the game. This is Fate Grand Order. Actually, I'm always surprised that Fate Grand Order did not, like, it's been around for so long and it's done so well over such a long period of time. So again, this is all worldwide over the past 10 years. We got Epic 7, which is actually doing, I would say, better than average as well. And it wasn't around 10 years ago, but that's why we're not seeing anything in the very beginning. We have Fire Emblem Heroes. Personally, I do not like this game. I thought it was kind of not a great game from the very beginning, and that's why we see a little bit of a bigger decline, and it's, yeah. Enough said. This Summoner's War. We have Genshin Impact. So Genshin Impact was not available 10 years ago, obviously. And actually been doing decently well over time. Of course, everything trends downward every game, but they've been holding on to players more than the average. But that's just from quality of the game, right? Whether you like it or not, Genshin Impact is a quality developed game. And they did a lot of things right. They do some things wrong, but they did a lot of things right. So that's why they're retaining players more than anything else. Because really, there's not a whole lot. You could argue that some games may be better. Maybe you prefer other games better, but there's not really too many games that are coming out in terms of gachas to try to dethrone Genshin Impact. So when you're at the top, or one of the ones at the top, it's you got a decent spot. So this is just comparing a handful of the ones that we just looked at versus each other. So obviously things like Genshin Impact, much more popular. Fate Grand Order, more popular than the other ones. Let's take a look. Gacha game interest in the United States. So this is United States. We're going to take a look at worldwide in a minute, but it did actually kind of peak over here around 2020, 2021, 2022. So that was the biggest time for gacha gaming in the United States. Kind of similar worldwide. And the reasons for that is, of course, COVID. So, COVID-19 pandemic, increasing gaming adoption worldwide, stay-at-home orders, layoffs, and decreased employment numbers, leaving more people more time to game. Kind of interesting how less people working means more people playing video games. Who would have thought that, except for literally everybody? Genshin Impact also did have it did play a big part in getting people more aware of gacha games, because they wanted to play things like Legend of Zelda, and then like, oh, it's anime Legend of Zelda. I'm really interested in this. And Genshin, of course, spent hundreds of millions of dollars on marketing. So when you have anime Legend of Zelda and hundreds of millions of dollars in marketing, of course, they're like, what genre is this? This is a gacha game. Gacha genre kind of got really popular. pretty fast. So Genshin's global rollout was perfectly timed to COVID, massively funded with hundreds of millions of dollars in advertising spend, natively cross-platform, not in emulators. I mean, you could use emulators as well, but you don't need to, including PC and console when many other gachas were not, and increasing awareness of gacha gaming to a broader audience. So this is interesting. I think a lot of people don't actually know about this, especially YouTubers, I think, don't know about this. But YouTube also increased viewership similarly, COVID-related, peaking in 2022, 2023. So YouTube is not as big as it was during COVID and after COVID. So that's, I think a lot of YouTubers are actually, and if you guys want to see the years, but I think you would assume that the years go by twos. But I feel like a lot of YouTubers do not know that there's less people watching the platform than there was a couple of years ago. Still crazy amounts of people watching the platform, don't get me wrong, but less than there was a couple of years ago. And there's more YouTubers than ever because a lot more people became YouTubers after COVID. They're like, you know what? I can't go into work. I may as well start this whole YouTube career that I've always wanted to do. So yeah, plenty more videos actually getting uploaded than there was 5 years ago, 10 years ago. How much competition do new entrants have into the market? So let's take a look at Economics 101, supply and demand. Oh, we're getting into matrices, guys. We got PowerPoint presentations. It's almost like you're at work. So we have here, if you guys are not familiar with what this is just a general economics principle. So supply of, in this case, it's going to be gacha games, right? Supply of gacha games, low supply, high supply. So low supply of gacha games, and then we have on the bottom the demand, the amount of players that are looking for gacha games. So if we have low supply of gacha games and low demand, there's a risk opportunity. If we have a high supply of gacha games but a low demand, there's little chance for success. If we have a high supply and high demand, there is good competition. So it's kind of what we were seeing a little bit more a couple of years ago, is high supply and high demand. Now demand is kind of decreasing. Not demand of gacha games is like decreasing rapidly. Some games are decreasing rapidly, but we do have some good competition. The interesting part, though, is high demand and low supply. This is what we were seeing like 10 years ago, is people were looking for mobile games, right? And there were not really too many games coming out that quenched what people were looking for in terms of like the whole gacha RPG. That's kind of what we're talking about today. Excellent chance for success. So we've seen things like 10 years ago that really shouldn't have been successful, that were massively successful. They're like printing hundreds of millions of dollars. You're like, this is just like JPEGs on a screen, and there's like $100 packs and people are just buying them and going crazy. So yeah, this is kind of setting up the next couple slides. So 10 years ago, oh yeah, this is exactly what I said 10 years ago. Ironically, Summoner's War. I'm not talking just about Summoner's War. Calm down. But in general, 10 years ago, moderate budget RPG and or gacha game could generate significant revenue with little competition. This market favored the developers, since the players had little options for mobile-based gachas, so less choice. Over the years, many companies took notice and joined the market. I'm sure you noticed that a lot of companies put out a lot of games it seems very fast all the time, every month, every week, every day. There are new mobile games coming out into the market, just shoveling them out. So the increase in options shifted the power over the past 10 years from the developers to the players. That changed things from a seller's market with less supply and more demand, where the sellers or the developers have the leverage, to a buyer's market with more supply, less demand. I would say not crazy amount less demand, but still less demand than there was a few years ago, right? So more supply, less demand, and buyers, consumers, gamers, players have the leverage. You have the leverage now more than you did 10 years ago. So you as a community can decide what is successful and what fails, which is dangerous, especially for developers, which could be good, but could also be scary. So with as many options as the players have, now aggressive monetization or lazy development is punished, and we're talking about like Konosuba Fantastic Days, Black Beacon, Tribe 9, many other dozens of games that have shut the servers down, reached end of service. The list goes on and on. I'm just cherry picking a few here. So some developers are already aware of this trend and changing their monetization models. So Do It Night Abyss and Ananta are a couple of the ones that are now removing Gacha, and they're changing their monetization strategies for what the market is asking for. I don't know how good that's going to go. I'm not a huge fan of Do It Night Abyss, but I have high hopes for Ananta. I think Ananta is going to do a lot of stuff right, but that's just, we'll see when it comes out. We'll see. I often think this, and then the game comes out, and I'm like, oh no, that's not what I was hoping for, and disappointed. But so this is a little bit of an example of the landscape. And this is not every popular mobile RPG in 2015, but there was much fewer games vying for a piece of the pie, and everyone was getting paid, right? Well, maybe not everyone's getting, but a lot of games were getting paid. You could argue a lot of them were making much more than they should have because they were kind of garbage and they were kind of monetizing very aggressively. Then things changed 5 years later. Much more games still vying for the same piece of the pie. Maybe the pie got a little bit bigger, but much more games vying for attention and a piece of that pie. And then things changed even more over the next 5 years. And then, this is just scratching the tip, is so many games. And the pie got a little bit bigger, but there's so many more games than that pie can accommodate. The pie can't feed everyone until they're full and their stomach is bursting. There's going to be a lot of hungry developers, right? There's already a lot of hungry developers not making as much money as they need, not making as much money as they're hoping for. They started developing these games years and years ago, and then the environment is very different now. So yeah, just keep that in mind. The more developers, the more games come out, the less players in each game. Because people aren't going to be, aside from me, who's crazy, and some of you are crazy too, and like to play 10 games at the same time. But most normal people are not going to play like a dozen gacha games. Sane people are not going to play a dozen gacha games. So this is, of course, just a basic example. It does not include all games. I know some people are going to be like, oh, there's a game came out 10 years ago that was very popular. It's not on there. You put 6 games on there. You're so stupid. But it is just for demonstration purposes to show the increase in options over time. It is not an exact science. So my final points, gacha gaming is not dead. Even though it peaked during COVID, there are still billions of dollars to be made in mobile gacha gaming. But new gachas are going to die fast if they don't do things right. Segmented market favoring consumers means that if new gacha games want to succeed, they must do several things. One of several things, maybe all of them if they really want a huge success. Well, actually, they can't do all of them because some of them contradict the other ones. So if new gacha games want to succeed, they must either be the best with graphics, story, gameplay, superiority. People always want to play the best. That's why Genshin did well. That's why Wuwa, Wuthering Waves does well. That's why there are a handful of games that are just always printing money. They're better than the other games, and other games can't compete. But that also takes a lot of development time, energy, money, big teams of people. You can also be niche, which caters to a subgroup of die-hard loyal fans like licensed IP, sports, hybrid gachas, etc. You can be player first, which is kind of tricky because the best players and the best games and the niche games are also trying to be player first as well. Within reason, they want monetization first and then player second, but they're still trying to vie for players' attention. So player first means you can cater heavily to players and build loyalty. It is tricky because players, and let's be honest, you and I do this all the time, is we see a developer that gives us what we want, then we're like, I'm gonna yell until we get more things that we want, and then they give us more things that we want. It's like, oh yeah, it's rewarding bad behavior sometimes we get a little too greedy and we're like, I want, I'm gonna complain and I want more things, and I'm gonna keep doing this until As long as it keeps working, we can continue to do this. So they're within reason, cater heavily to players, build loyalty, monetize fairly and through unique methods. A couple of games do this well. I would say that this is still a struggle in the mobile gaming community, but there's also the option to create new genres, which is harder than it sounds. Genres and mechanics that players have not experienced before. Auto chess. Now auto chess is super saturated. A bunch of games came out just like that. Clash Royale, another one. So many games came out just like that. But initially, when the games first came out, it was unique and it was interesting and it was something different that people have not experienced a million times before. So, new things, new mechanics, new genres will succeed because it's fresh and new, at least in the beginning, and then the copycats will arrive and, destroy everything, and then there's going to be a whole bunch of competition regardless, as long as it works, because there will always be followers when people see a lot of money changing hands. So anyway, that is my take on the gacha situation. It is not dying anytime soon. It is perfectly fine, but it is really, really hard, and it's getting harder every year for developers and games to get a reasonably sized piece of the pie. And that's why things are going to continue to come out. They're going to be some attention in the beginning, and then they're just going to drop fast. And they're going to continue to drop faster than ever because more games are continuing to come out. More developers are continuing to try to vie for a piece of the pie. But anyway, that's it for this one. Hope you guys enjoyed it. Hope you guys got something out of it. See you as always in the next one.